Hi everyone, this is my contrastive analysis on English and Castilian Spanish. In this presentation, I will first talk about the background of the language. I will then talk about ways that English and Castilian Spanish transfer between each other, and then I'll talk about ways that the languages do not transfer between each other. I'll talk about the cultural norms of Castilian Spanish speakers and the classroom implications of these norms. Then I'll talk about tips and tricks you could use in your classroom to support your Castilian Spanish speaking learners. And I will present a handout that I created with all the information in the presentation. I'll summarize the presentation's main points and then share my resources. Spanish first began as a dialect of Latin, mixed with local languages around them. When Muslim conquerors arrived, 4,000 Spanish words ended up being derived from Arabic. However, adopted Arabic words lost their original pronunciation, so the overall sounds of phonology in Spanish are surprisingly not Arabic influenced. The Royal Spanish Academy was founded in 1713 with the goal of standardizing the language. This goal was achieved in 1726 when the first Spanish dictionary was produced. Spanish was the historical language of many current U.S. states while being controlled by Spanish or Mexican governments. Spanish is still spoken widely in many of these regions today. This is the background of the Castilian dialect specifically. In Spain, Spanish is called Castellano or Castilian when contrasting with other languages spoken in Spain, such as Galician, Basque, and Catalan. In Spain, Castilian dialect is considered to be the same as Standard Spanish. Some Spanish speakers consider Castilian a generic term, much like Spanish is considered a generic term in English. Now I will talk about the components of the Castilian language. I'll talk about phonology, which are the word sounds, morphology, which are the parts of words, orthography, which is a language's writing system, syntax, which is word order, and spelling. Pragmatics and semantics will be covered when discussing the cultural norms of Castilian Spanish speakers. These are some ways that English and Castilian Spanish transfer between each other. The phonemes listed here transfer directly between English and Castilian Spanish. For morphology, both languages pluralize their words the same way. In orthography, Spanish and English have many of the same grammatical rules, including capitalization and punctuation rules. As far as word order goes, compared to many other languages, the word order of Spanish and English are very similar, with a few exceptions. And for spelling, Spanish and English have a great amount of cognates. A cognate is a word in two languages that look alike and have the same meaning, such as accent being acento and compare being comparar. These are some ways that Castilian Spanish and English do not transfer between each other. The phonemes listed here do not transfer between the languages. And for morphology, some plural nouns do not pluralize the same way between both languages. For orthography, in Spanish, the system of writing is simplified because phonemes and graphemes have a one-to-one correspondence in most cases. However, in English, the system of writing is very complex because a one-to-one correspondence between phonemes and graphemes is not possible for all the complex sounds in the English language. For word order, in English, the subject precedes the verb, but in Spanish the verb precedes the subject. And for spelling, in Spanish, there is an avoidance of double letters, which there is not in English, as you can see in the following examples. For semantics, there is many different words that mean the same thing. For example, car in Castilian is coche, and car for Latin American Spanish is carro. There's also many different words for slang such as cool all over various Spanish-speaking countries. As for pragmatics, in Castilian Spanish, vos, as in you and others, is used. However, in every other country where Spanish is spoken, usted, ustedes, and tú is used. Ustedes and usted is expected for formal occasions to show respect. It's a good idea to address anybody you don't know in the usted form. You use vosotros when you're addressing people your age or people you're familiar with. There's a strong tendency for politeness in Spanish, so using the incorrect form may result in people thinking that you're impolite or overly familiar. Some cultural norms of Castilian Spanish speakers when it comes to communication would be shaking their acquaintance's hand, shaking their hand more warmly with a pat on the shoulder if you've met them multiple times, and double kissing them on the cheek if you have more familiarity with them. In general, Spaniards make more physical contact during conversation than English speakers. Some other norms include late lunches and dinners. In Spain, lunch is usually around 3 and dinner is usually around 10. Siestas are a midday nap that Spaniards will take, and shops will often close during that time and open up later. Each person typically has 2 first names and 1 last name, and religion is a very essential element in Spanish culture. Some classroom implications of these norms include expecting your students to use vosotros, which may present some challenges during grammar instruction if some students speak Castilian Spanish and others speak a different dialect of Spanish, where vosotros consequently would not be used. You should also expect your students to struggle in the mornings, since it's culturally appropriate to stay up later. There may also be a need for explicit instruction on the expectations of personal space in the US versus in Spain. Some tips and tricks include communicating with families early on about the importance of being on time and well rested for school. I've seen this play out many times in the school that I work at. Families are often very receptive to this conversation, especially if you come to it from a lens of being respectful and aware of their cultural values. You could also do a full class mini lesson about personal space and staying in your personal bubble, for example, and you should be mindful of religion. This is a picture of a handout I've created that summarizes all the main points in this presentation for an easily accessible resource to support your Castilian Spanish-speaking students. In conclusion, some of the main points in this presentation include that in Spain, Spanish is called Castellano or Castilian when contrasting with the other languages spoken in Spain. There are many different ways that English and Castilian Spanish transfer between each other, but there are also ways that they do not transfer. And educators should be aware of the various cultural norms of these students and the implications they could have for the classroom. These are some resources that I used during my presentation. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Adios.